AFR Talk, Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. It's great to be here. All the major indices, futures, Dow futures in positive territory right now, looking to give back some of what we lost yesterday. Look, folks, as I said, I think this is a healthy move. It needed it. The question is whether it's going to be sustainable. We had a fair amount of volume, some conviction in the markets yesterday as the Fed is taking the potentially taking the training wheels off of them as they continue to trash the dollar. And when we lose that drug, these are the kinds of things that happen. And it confirms what I've been saying for a long time, folks. This is a false positive, in my opinion, in the markets because we are linking. And I said this today. I said this earlier. I'll say it again. Everywhere we turn, we hear everybody saying when they're talking about the markets, they're talking about the economy. They're replacing the word markets with the word economy. Two separate things. The fundamentals of the economy, in my opinion, still stink. They may have improved a little bit, but they're still bad. And the fundamentals of the markets, I guess, very good. If you look at some of the financial fundamentals of companies, they look pretty good. So we're going to take your questions on that, of course, later on in the program. Right now, we've got former Republican House Majority Leader and former chair of the Freedom Works, Dick Armey, and it's a joy to have Leader Armey on the program, and I sure appreciate you being with us, Leader Armey. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you. I love your show.
Thank you. Leader Armey, I was thinking, and I know, one of the things I say all the time on this program in reference to some of the common sense that, Washington, they have their ideology has blinded them, and they don't have a whole lot of common sense, but is that you don't need to be a PhD in economics to figure out some of these things that we're doing or maybe going down the wrong path. You are a PhD in economics. You know about some of these things. You and I are aligned when we think about the tax situation. Steve Forbes, who's a regular on this program, will be on with us next week again. About a year ago, I asked him, I asked Steve if he thought that the environment was going to be right in the next couple years for a flat tax. And he said he thought it was. Now, I very seldom disagree with him, but I had to disagree with him on that. I don't know that it is. But now we have all of these IRS scandals. And I'm trying to figure out why there hasn't been a conservative step up to the plate and start talking about tax reform, true tax reform. Tax reform to me is basically taking our tax code, throwing it in the trash, and coming out with some sort of flat tax. But do you think that's going to happen?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell. The forces in Congress are pretty much aligned against the flat tax because so many of these people in Washington have actually built their career on tax complexity. And by that I mean they fight to get on that committee because they know that while they're on that committee and there's national anxiety over changes in the more complex changes in the tax code, that they'll always be able to finance their campaigns. It's probably the single greatest cause of what I should call public finance campaigns of anything I've seen. It's worse than earmarks, quite frankly, on the spending side. These guys get into a rewrite or a revision of the tax code, and the first thing you know, they're out there peddling, you contribute to my campaign, and I'll see if I can do something to help you get the tax break that you want. And it really frustrates me because we assume that people who have the privilege of holding high office have purposes for the nation that guide their behavior. And quite frankly, as public choice theory tells us, they have purposes for themselves, most immediately their reelection that govern their behavior. And that, of course, results in all kinds of aberrance in their behavior. So I don't know. The other thing that bothers me is we don't today have a good champion of the flat tax in Congress.
Yeah.
and frankly, we haven't had since I left. For a little while after I left, Jim Nussle from Iowa took up the cause, and I thought he was going to be a good champion. He just frankly lost interest and got on with other things. An idea that's frankly is difficult legislatively to move as the flat tax really requires a devoted champion, and we just don't have such a person.
How do I get so caught up in the idea that those in Washington are so consumed with the next election as opposed to the next generation, and trying to come up with all these solutions to fix the economy, government solutions to fix the economy. I'm a free market guy. And yet, if they truly want to fix the economy, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but to me this seems so obvious from a corporate standpoint and a personal standpoint that if we had a flat tax, that it would be good for revenues, it would be good for certainty in the markets in the economy, and it would have to be good for growth.
Ever since Harlan Robushka created the flat tax concept as applied in the United States in actually 1984. It was a very big attraction to President Reagan. It has been the correct answer and the most responsible possible tax policy for this country. But, like I say, the behavior of people in office isn't governed by what is best for the nation. It's governed by what gets me through the next election most comfortably with the least amount of effort. And I want to stress this, too. I've studied on this an awful lot, having been able to be in Washington and actually live and work among members of Congress. These people are inconvenience minimizers. They basically want a track that causes them the least possible convenience in their life. So they're not even, in most instances, afraid they might lose their next election. They're afraid they might get an opponent in their next election that would mean they would have to go out and campaign, as one normally assumes they should expect to do in the first place. So you got the first line of resistance to the flat tax are the members of the House and Senate tax writing committees. Then, of course, across the country, we have in so many ways people who have built their life's career out of tax complexity. Probably most influential are, interestingly enough, the development officers for universities and foundations and hospitals and that sort of thing. They perpetrate the myth that if you have a flat tax and take away the deductibility for charitable contributions, that there will be a sharp decline in charitable contributions. There's nothing in our life's experience in this country that would suggest that would be the case. In fact, just the opposite is most likely to be the case. But again, these folks are very effective in making their argument. They have a big influence over the people. I mean, everybody wants to feel like I'm a friend to the nearest university or the nearest art gallery or the nearest charity. And so that kind of lobbying effort on top of an inherent disposition of office holders against doing something that would diminish their ability to fund their campaigns through what should I say, swapping favors is basically what it amounts to in the legislative process.
Mm. Dan Celia with Financial Issues, and we're speaking to former Republican House Majority Leader Dick Armey. Leader Armey, so it goes back to something I say often that you just said. I mean, the American people have to raise up candidates in the primaries to challenge these incumbents.
Actually, I've been making that argument. Actually, I reintroduced the flat tax in 1994, and it had kind of laid dormant after the tax fiasco of '86. And when I reintroduced it, I made the comment to one of my assistants that we will pass this into law when America beats Washington. I had thought with the emergent Tea Party movement that we might be getting to that point. I think that's kind of woofed and waked a little bit again because, unfortunately, what happens is people who are privileged to find themselves at the head or a level of influence on something like that movement begin to turn their attention inward. And it's the same old tragic thing again. It becomes about me. I had said in my book, Armey's Axiom, if it's about you, you lose. I still believe that, but I think before you lose, you will cost the nation an opportunity.
Wow, that's great. Let me switch gears a little bit and ask you about, well, I was going to ask you about let me go to Obamacare. To me, it's an economic nightmare. It's going to put the government deeper in debt. It's going to have personal incomes crunched. It's going to hurt spending. It's going to hurt consumers, and more importantly, it's going to hurt quality of care. In my opinion, is this? I understand that it's a bit of a power grab. It's a social control thing, and it is this. It sounds wonderful of all these people getting insured. Have you thought much about the economics of that?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any opinion on it?
First of all, again, I go back to one of my own observations. Nobody spends somebody else's money wisely. Anytime you have a system that is dependent upon third-party payment, you're going to have a system that is inherently dysfunctional. And when the government is the third party making the payment, and the government always seems to want to make themselves the insurer of first resort, not the insurer of last resort. The heavy-handed things they did with Medicare to force people, even wealthy people who didn't need it, were forced into Medicare by the heavy-handed way in which they wrote the legislation. It seems to me that demonstrates fairly clearly the object of the legislation was not about health care, but it was about government control of health care. Those are, frankly, two different, very different things. And the idea that you should put the government's ability to control people's health care ahead of the quality of health care is to me, very repugnant, but that's really, frankly, what it's about. One of the things that bothers me, I remember when we had the markup with Hillary Clinton back in, was that 93? Yeah. I remember commenting that the American people did not want a nationalized health care system, and one of the liberal Democrats looked across the aisle at me and just snarled. The American people are going to get it whether they want it or not because we've been waiting years to do this. Well, it's not about you. I mean, it just frustrates me to tears that these guys can't get over themselves and understand that their work should be about people other than themselves. But Obamacare is going to be a major catastrophe, as I believe, quite frankly, Medicare has been. Now, Medicare, had it been confined to those who truly needed it, we would have all in this country celebrated what a great act of generosity for this great nation to lend assistance to the truly needy. But it wasn't about that. It was about how do we force people in it whether they need it or not. And, of course, it obviously defaulted on its mission, got too big, the government can't handle it, it's a financial catastrophe, and all the things it doesn't have to be if it were just voluntary, as they said it was going to be in the first place.
So why aren't Republicans now? Senator Colburn was on the program not long ago, and we were talking about this, and I didn't mean any disrespect, but I interrupted him as I was asking this question. I said, I know I said, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that, you got mainstream media against us, and we can't win. We can't win that battle. Why aren't Republicans fighting for the American people in a more direct and I don't know, just with a little bit more guts for the American people? Why do you think that is?
It is a frustration. Of course, you're too young to remember this, but I'm young enough to remember the beating that Barry Goldwater took back in 1964, when, in fact, he accurately predicted almost every dilemma that now besets Social Security. They quickly labeled him as a man who hated old people, who was against old people. They abused him. And ever since that, Republicans have been terrified to take on Social Security and Medicare. As a matter of fact, Medicare could not pass Congress in 1963. They came back in 1964 and made Medicare an amendment to Social Security, and having done so, they generated only 16 votes against it because most Republicans, irrespective of their knowledge this is going to turn out badly, were just frankly too terrified of the demagoguery and the political attacks to vote against it. It became known as the third rail of American politics, and all discussions of Medicare and Social Security have been governed, frankly, by Democrats that don't care and Republicans that don't dare. And that's just the way it's been. And we still have a tough time, Doc Coburn being one of the few exceptions, of the guy who dares to stand up and, say, hey, this isn't working out. We got to do something about it. But these are rare birds, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I want to some great perspectives, Leader Armey. I'm so grateful that you took some time out of a busy day to come share with our audience around the country, and I sure always did appreciate your work, and I thank you for that. And I hope you'll come back and visit with us again as these issues start to take a little bit more form. And
I
sure
hope so.
appreciate you being with us.
I hate to be so gloomy, but.
Hey,
this is a great nation, and one of the things that has always amazed me about the strength of the free market is that it is, by and large, overcome the travails of ill-advised public policy. There can be a point when public policy will be just too big and too overbearing for that to happen, but to this point, the nation has sustained itself extremely well against the worst kind of moronic public policy.
Boy, amen to that. And we do have the greatest nation in the world. We just need to get back there and get back to our roots and free markets, driving a private sector economy. That is for sure. So I appreciate your words and your insights, and I look forward to talking with you again. Thank you so much, former Republican House Majority Leader Dick Armey. Thank you so much, Leader Armey.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dan Celia, Financial Issues. Great insights, great words from a brilliant man, a man who never lost his common sense when he was in Washington. Still has it, still hasn't lost it. And boy, do we need some of that. Do we need some good, practical looks at what has happened, and to think through the unintended consequence of the actions of those in Washington. I sure appreciate Dick Armey. We'll be right back after this. We're going to get to the phones.